Are we recording officially?
We are.
All right.
So just make sure that's the little. We're good.
Okay.
Alrighty. All right, so just to recap, it looks like we...
Hold on.
You go ahead.
Come on now.
All right.
Gavel us out whenever you're ready.
We're ready. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so just to recap, we've got 3 nominations so far. Autumn Keel, Maya Mendez, and Noah Tope. Is there any others?
Although I heard that we can have one ETJ. I didn't hear if we can only have one.
We can only have one. It says that the remainder has to be those who reside.
Nope. If you're telling me there can only be one, I will withdraw my nomination for Maya and ask her to move into town. Just kidding.
Certainly do that.
But yes, I'll withdraw my nomination for Maya.
Okay.
So at the moment, we only have 2.
Any others?
Alan, I'd like to nominate Marissa Langford.
Okay. Any other nominations?
Saw 2 names that I found appealing. Preston Mitchell is a certified planner. Being a planning board, I thought that was it's good to have a planner on the board. And also, Mr. Robert Malone has a seasoned public school, a lot of experience in initials and 10 years of transportation. I don't know what that meant, but it was an intriguing line. I'd like to consider that.
What was the second one, please?
Malone.
Yeah, we didn't get those.
Robert Malone?
Yep, Robert Malone.
The other one.
The other one was Preston Mitchell. So in alphabetical order, we have Autumn Keel, Marissa Langford, Robert Malone, Preston Mitchell, and Noah Tope. Any others? Okay, so we'll close nominations. You have the ballots.
Who nominated Marissa? Sorry.
Alyssa.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Alrighty. Got it. Alright. So on the ballots, if you will rank your order of preference, and then list your preferred top candidate again on the first line, and then print and sign. Again, the candidates that were nominated were Autumn Keel. This is in alphabetical order, so no preference here. Autumn Keel, Marissa Langford, Robert Malone, Preston Mitchell, and Noah Tope.
Can you repeat the last 3, please?
Sure. Robert Malone, Preston Mitchell, and Noah Tope.
I think I'm missing one. We have 5 or 4. Sorry,
Should be 5.
I'm missing.
So Autumn Keel, Marissa Langford, Robert Malone, Preston Mitchell, and Noah Tope.
I have a request.
Sure.
Could you possibly read those to us as far as what they were saying, their purpose, experience, and whatnot?
Sure.
It's trying to scroll back and forth and see them through on our screens is a little difficult to catch.
They should be bookmarked so you can click between the names. Is that opening up for you?
It does, but it's so small.
It's very hard to see.
Impossible for me. You can blow it up, but then the screen. But I'm good.
Sure. Is that the pleasure of the board to read through the applications?
Sure, that'll help.
Okay.
Fingers getting tired.
What information from the application would be helpful?
I think to tell us why.
Okay.
Say, an employer, so we know what it is that they actually do professionally.
Okay.
So it gives us a general idea of background, who, what it is that they do, and then the reason of why they would like to be on this board.
Okay. Perfect. So we'll start with Autumn Keel. She resides on East Chatham Street. Yorkshire Group is her employer. She's a managing director. And she states, as a resident of downtown Apex and previous Apex business owner, I am very interested in the progress, development, and preservation of Apex while optimizing it as a community, a historic area, and a place of business. I live within walking distance of Salem Street and know many of the business owners personally. They are neighbors and friends. I understand the challenges and needs of not only the local business owners, but also the residents. I am passionate about seeing Apex grow without losing the charming parts of the town that makes it Apex. Small changes have large impacts on a town that prides itself on its historical heritage and charm. Any questions?
How long has each applicant resided in Apex? That's not a question.
We don't ask that question. We verify that they do live within the corporate limits of the ETJ. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
That should be a valid question.
Sure, yeah. Marissa Langford lives on Chessie Station, and she states, I've lived in Apex. I lived in Apex in the 1990s before relocating to Sanford for a number of years. We chose to move back to Apex in 2022 because I wanted to be closer to my job in Raleigh. We selected a townhome near downtown because of the walkability to restaurants and stores was important to us. Even though I had observed that Apex was growing over the years, I didn't appreciate how much until living here again. I want to be a part of ensuring we grow smartly and achieve a balance that best serves residents as well as business owners. This is a great community, and maintaining all the things that make it great while it expands and welcomes more and more people is the challenge that faces our elected council members. I want to be part of helping to shape what Apex becomes, excuse me. Okay. Robert Malone resides on Eyam Hall Lane. Current employer is retired. And why are you interested in serving? Interested in community. Next is Preston Mitchell. Resides on Acorn Hill Lane. Employer is Womble Bond Dickinson. Land planner. Why are you interested, or why would you like to serve? Having practiced local government land use planning, yet now transitioned into the private sector, I am excited about the opportunity to serve in a volunteer capacity for my home community. I would like very much to be an active part of managing and guiding the growth of Apex. And Mr. Tope. He resides on Lazo Lane, and it works for UNC as a program manager for real estate development and facilities. And he's listed a couple paragraphs of why he's interested in serving. So I'll read through those. When my wife and I moved to North Carolina from Northern Virginia 5 years ago, we chose Apex for its charm and potential. Upon moving here, I immediately started reading the Peak Plan 2030 and the 2045 land use map. The more I read, the more excited I become about Apex's opportunity to develop in an even better place to call home. Balanced growth is critical for supporting a variety of uses in Apex without negatively impacting the town's charm. At the current pace, Apex's current estimated population of 75,000 is estimated to increase to 125,000 by 2030. Depending on the economy and other factors, the growth rate may slow down, but it is still important to make sure that each project is viewed through multiple lenses. In addition, having two parents in the real estate planning and development sectors has always fueled my interest in helping to shape the landscape of a local municipality. The opportunity to be part of the decision-making process is the place where family and I call home is very exciting. Hopefully that was helpful.
Everyone had an opportunity
You
to
want-
complete their ballot?
Sure.
It's this guy here.
No October, okay, thank you.
Thank you. You said rank them and then put that number one selection in.
That's correct, yes. Okay, and this is your number one.
Yeah, it's in order.
Alrighty, I'll state the nominations for the record. We have Noah Tope by Board Member Sarah So. Noah Tope by Board Member Stephen Rhodes. Noah Tope by Daniel. Preston Mitchell by Tim Royal. Preston Mitchell by Ryan Akers. Preston Mitchell by Keith Braswell. Marissa Langford by Alyssa Bird. And Autumn Keel by Tina Sherman. So we've got a tie between the top two candidates, and that's Noah Tope and Preston Mitchell. And that's what will go before the mayor and council. All right, any questions?
So they will select one of those two instead
They still
of,
have the authority to select any of them, but this will obviously be the recommended two candidates.
so since we did ranked choices, do we have some overlap between the ranked choices or?
Sure, I mean, you know, your feedback obviously will be considered by the mayor and the council, and by ranked choice, that helps them to know who your top priority candidates are.
Got it.
That was the idea behind
Okay,
that.
thank you for that.
You're welcome, yes. Any other questions? Okay, thank y'all for your feedback. I'll turn it over to Ashley.
Good evening. Ashley Gentry, Deputy Town Clerk. So for those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, a little background about me. I have 17 years of local government experience, which started back in 2006 with the North Carolina League of Municipalities in the Workers' Comp Claims Department. So then about 4 years ago, I decided to switch gears a little bit and figure out, I decided to see what the clerk world's about. So I did. Fast forward, in January 2023, I was hired as the new deputy town clerk for Apex. So I've been with the town for a little over a year now. So that's a little bit about me and my history. Now, I'm here to facilitate the chair and vice chair process this evening. So for voting clarity, the vote tonight on chair and vice chair shall be appointed by the mayor from the members of the board and confirmed by the town council. Okay? So the term of the chair and vice chair is of 1 year, calendar year of 2024. So before we get started, are there any questions? Okay. So currently, Reggie Skinner is the current chair. He is no longer seeking reappointment. So now is the time to reappoint another nomination, or is there a nomination to appoint another member to the planning board as chair? So if you can discuss that now and make a nomination.
I would like to nominate Tina for chair. I think she's a very passionate person who cares about the community and really wants to do the right thing by, the town and for everyone in it.
Do I have another nomination as chair? Do I have a motion? Was that your motion?
I would like to.
You said you wanted.
I would like to make a motion to nominate Tina for chair.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any opposed? Or all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Tina. Okay, so now vice chair. Tina was our vice chair, so now we need someone to be in the vice chair role. Do I have a nomination for a vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Tim for the vice chair position.
I'll second that.
Oh, goodness. Do I have to accept the nomination?
Okay, so we got one, got you second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Tim, you are now our new vice chair.
Thank you.
It has to go.
I'm sorry.
It has to be approved.
Clarify.
Sorry.
I got a back check, right?
Back up. I got excited. I'm sorry. I got excited. So yeah. So that will go forward to council and appointed by the mayor and confirmed by town council.
I do have a question about that. I mean, if we are up for reappointment, can we be nominated as chair and vice chair?
Don't be asking complicated.
Well, I'm just asking. I mean, like,
Valid.
okay, okay.
Okay. Any other questions? No? That's it.
Thank you, Ashley.
Moving on up.
All right. All right, new business item number 2. Sajid, did I say that correctly? Sajid, apologies. Possible motion regarding amendments to the UDO related to traffic calming.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. So Sajid Hassan, traffic safety engineer for the town of Apex. I work under Russell Dalton. The purpose of these proposed amendments is to update the language and the requirements of the traffic calming policy in the Unified Development Ordinance. So a little background, the requirements of traffic calming are found in section 7.2.1.L of the UDO, last updated in 2015. So traffic calming is part of the TRC review for new development, as well as studying existing roads when speeds are studied under request. And as to not hinder emergency management response, and approval is needed from both Apex Fire Department and Apex Police Department. And then the information we have for traffic calming is available on our website as well as the application. So starting in 2023, we were looking and researching traffic calming policies throughout North Carolina, as well as trying to update any of the language that was within what's already in the ordinance. So these are a list of several municipalities where we found traffic calming policies. We did a comparison between all of them. And so over our research, what we have found is mainly regarding speed limits. First of all, speed limits is that by North Carolina general statute, any road within municipal limits is 35 miles per hour unless otherwise posted with that NCDOT concurrence. For municipally owned roads, that can vary by ordinance. The ordinance can either alter the speed limit of any municipal road, or it can default based on the type of road it is. So Apex, similar to Cary and Chapel Hill, we actually default all residential roads to 25 miles per hour. And in cities like Garner, all municipal roads are 25 miles per hour unless otherwise posted. And then certain bigger municipalities like Charlotte, Raleigh, and Durham actually have their own DOT organization to set their speed limits. And so when we look at the research between all these municipalities, we found that residential streets are usually 25 miles per hour. Collector streets, from minor to major, are usually posted between 25 and 35. And so what we've also researched through this traffic calming policy is the type of traffic calming that they use. So traffic calming is generally used to limit the speed of traffic because due to the type of nature the road is supposed to be, if it's residential or urban or commercial, we want to make sure that the speed is limited in at a certain range. So certain methods we can use, we can first start with non-deflective. These are easiest to install and least encroaching, which allows mainly to make the environment seem like it has to be somewhere driven slow. So speed enforcement cameras, radar signs, any type of warning signs, pavement markings that can narrow the lanes, on-street parking are methods that environment can actually slow down traffic. But when most people think about traffic calming, they're thinking about vertical deflections, which are the most obtrusive and provide a level of discomfort when driving over them to actually get people to slow down. So we're using things like speed humps, speed cushions, tables, raised intersections, raised crosswalks, and rumble strips. But in terms of vertical deflection, we've also used horizontal deflection. So horizontal deflection is not as obtrusive, but requires drivers to make decisions to switch lanes, shift over, make turns, which can reduce travel speeds. It's easier to install than vertical deflection devices. And on a more macroscopic scale, the versions require more of an offside detour for vehicles traveling through. This can either restrict them going into roads that have more residential nature, and also require them to make more turns, which in fact helps them reduce speeds. So majority of municipalities, when we research, actually allow traffic calming on residential streets, neighborhood streets, or local streets, as well as actually allowing on collector streets as well. And they include additional vicinity, but one of the key requirements is that it has to be a 25 mile per hour road, has to be 2 lanes. And then usually many things like speed bumps are usually retrofitted. They're not part of new construction when we go through our TRC review. And then we also include methods such as signs, markings, and as well as traffic enforcement. It has a little bit of impact, but not as much as the other traffic calming applications. So when it comes to volumes, to meet their traffic calming thresholds, they usually use a daily count, not an hourly count, ranging from 0 vehicles, it doesn't matter, sometimes volume's not counted, but up to 6,000 vehicles max, because we don't want to start installing traffic calming on major roadways. And they also use speed criteria of the 85th percentile speed when measuring the traffic speed, not the average speed. And so in cities like Raleigh, they actually use speed-related crashes as a criteria to warrant traffic calming. So this is kind of a little snapshot of the municipalities that we researched, and also the key details of what their qualifications are for traffic calming. So just a basic overview, and through this kind of overview, we decided to propose propose these amendments right here. First of all, we want to update the language because currently, the language I use does not reflect the current organization we have. We are currently now the Transportation Infrastructure Development, and so we need to reflect that in the municipal ordinance as well as the traffic calming is now going to be studied by the traffic safety engineer, myself, and that has to be codified into the ordinance as well. And so the department has changed. It's also overseen by the Director of Transportation Infrastructure Development, not Public Works, as stated before. So based upon the research, we've decided that we want to include minor collector streets that are posted at 25 miles per hour. Currently, our ordinance says must not be a thoroughfare, must not be a collector, but because collector streets, some minor collector streets are almost similar to nature and residential streets, we want to include them as part of the traffic calming criteria. And in terms of the types of devices that we're using, we're trying to go beyond just speed humps when people think about traffic calming. And we just want to include maybe a general type of vertical deflection device, as well as any other type of methods. But the non-deflective devices, such as signs and pavement markers, want to still be able to use that beyond just the warrants itself, and that's something that we know we can use as engineering judgment in our department. Currently, in order to meet emergency management response, we have to have approval from the fire chief and the police chief. However, trying to go directly to the chief for each traffic calming approval can be a hefty process. So therefore, we're allowing the chiefs to actually delegate someone that can approve our proposals for traffic calming. And we're also changing the speed threshold that we currently have in the ordinance. We're going to 85th percentile speed from the average speed, and also having a daily traffic volume of 800 vehicles per day rather than the hourly count that we had before. And you can see that we base this upon the type of development which would be more residential in nature. So currently our process requires us to either delegate to an HOA to do the public outreach. And then there's also a petition process that the HOA has to complete. However, we are trying to go away from what we're trying to do is that we are trying to have the HOA do the approval and do the petition process itself, rather than have the town go directly to each of the petitioners. So we're actually delegating the HOA to be responsible for the public outreach and the petition process and the approval, and coming back to us. The only exception here would be the areas that do not have HOAs, and something like that we'd be responsible for the public outreach and trying to get the petition process completed. And then so we're also saying that rather than just 1 month of public outreach for HOA, the HOA has 6 months to do the entire process. And in terms of goals over equity, the town is trying to remove the cost share agreement, especially when you have neighborhoods that might not have an HOA, or an HOA that is kind of more of a skeleton crew. That it would not be fair for us to actually require them to still have this cost share up front. So in terms of equity, we are removing the cost share, not just for installation, but also for removal as well. And instead of having a petition process to remove any type of traffic calming, we're just going to have a request, have a review, and then determine whether there's removal is necessary, and can cover 100% of that cost. So the next steps for transportation infrastructure development would we like to have more traffic information, our policies, and our guidance available for all on the website. We'll work to improve access to that on our website, have access to those website resources. We're trying to explore more low-cost, high-impact methods of traffic calming, and then trying to do more research and determine what are the best solutions for maybe different types of cases. And then also provide literature to educate the public about our Vision Zero program and what we're doing to promote that. After we have the amendments listed, where we're going to do make our modifications to the amendments to the UDO. I don't know if there's any questions there.
Questions?
I got a few. So it's funny because you'll get a room full of people here and they're like, we have the worst traffic in Apex. It's like a gridded hall. And then we're up here and be like, holy crap, everybody's speeding. We need to slow them down.
Yes.
So it's like kind of yin and the yang. But I think this is good. I've been working a lot with Chris here. I'm doing several T&D developments in Apex, and we're trying to slow people down using streetscape, narrower streets, narrow lanes, on-street parking. It's been a challenge, to be honest. We're making inroads to allowing the desired streetscapes in Apex, but I wish we could slow people down through geometric design, not kind of putting a Band-Aid on the real issue, which is people feel comfortable driving fast on the streets because we design them for cars and not so much for people. I feel like traffic calming as presented here is really putting, it's shielding the real issue, which is our underlying design is kind of based on geometric highway design, and we really need kind of an urban street design. We need to get away from subdivisions being designed as you know, mini highways and street or roads, so to speak. They need to be streets, more pedestrian centric. That's my high horse. I'll get off it, but I think this is good. It's a good first step, but I think we can go further in Apex.
Yeah, and I guess my last slide, I'm saying we're still working on other things as well. So obviously this is not going to be the end.
No, but I have to give kudos to Chris and some of the folks in the utility group where we are actually pushing the envelope and getting street trees incorporated into more development in Apex. So I like to see that.
I have a concern around the HOA piece. I was wondering if you could speak to that a bit. I'm particularly concerned that we are shifting not some, but all of the responsibility from the town strictly to HOAs. And I want to hear a little bit more about the rationale for that. My concern is, you know, speaking, wearing my hat as someone who lives in a community with an HOA. It's a volunteer position. We don't have staff. I pay tax dollars.
Yes.
If you're shifting this entire responsibility onto my HOA, which is a very small community, it's just not going to get done. It's really hard. In fact, I think my current HOA president I think we're in search of an HOA president. So this is an incredibly tall order, and I'm very concerned that the town completely shifted all of this from town staff to HOAs, and I'm in vehement opposition. So I would love to hear the rationale for this.
I'll provide a little bit of background since that was probably my doing. So we actually did the same exact thing in the town of Garner, and it actually went exceptionally well. And to change it a little bit, there is a lot of work that has to be done. If it's not done by the HOA, it's actually done by a petitioner. And so you're going to have one person that's required to go door to door for the neighborhood to get the petition. Using the HOA as a middle person helps streamline the communication outreach. And so you sometimes you might have one person in the neighborhood that wants traffic calming, but the rest of the neighborhood doesn't. And so this kind of helps bring everybody together in the neighborhood so they have that discussion, and it kind of can help avoid having neighbors pitted against each other, which I've seen in other communities as well. So it's really meant to streamline the process and help staff work together with the neighborhood as a whole.
So what I'm hearing is still a shift. I hear the rationale, but I'm still hearing a complete shift from staff-led to petitioner, neighbor-centered, focused.
Yeah, I'll provide clarification on that. It's still, we create the petition area under our current policy, and we provide that petition area to the applicant, and they are still required under our court ordinance to coordinate with the HOA, and the HOA decides whether the HOA wants to take over the petition process or to defer to the individual. Regardless, that petition going door to door and getting those signatures is required under our current ordinance. It's not the town staff that do that. It is either an individual that's delegated by the HOA or the HOA itself. What we're saying is if you have an HOA, you no longer need to do that petition. You would follow your own HOA's current process, eliminate the door-to-door petition process. Your HOA may require a vote of some type, but regardless, we would just need to see the evidence that you reached out to the homeowners provided the information so everybody's aware of what you're doing before you make that decision, before you vote.
Okay.
So it's actually making it easier overall. It's not putting more of a burden on the HOA.
It's putting more of a, so again, I need some clarification. It still sounds like we are putting the burden on the individual. We are taking the responsibility from staff and putting it on an individual. Maybe not the HOA, but on an individual. If I have that correct, if I have that incorrect, please correct me.
My understanding that is incorrect. The
Okay.
petitioner is required to do it, not staff.
So,
Staff does not run a petition for every traffic calming request that comes in. If a petition comes in from a person within a neighborhood, they're responsible for running door to door to get those signatures. And what we're doing is making it easier on the petitioner to work through the HOA.
have you spoken with communities about whether this is actually?
I can tell you just based on my own experience that it went much faster, expedites the process, and was very supportive in the places I've been.
And that's in Garner, not in
Yes.
Apex, correct? Okay, and I mean, just again, as an individual with a lived
But I know
experience.
if I'm a petitioner, I would much more appreciate working through the HOA than having to go door to door by myself.
Having been the person who's rounded up my neighbors, I do not think this is a good use, and I think maybe a different way to go about it is discussing with community to say, hey, we're looking at implementing this. It's worked in Garner, it's worked in Raleigh, it's worked in Durham, wherever else it works. What does this look like in Apex? It still, to me, sounds like we're doing a shift from staff to town.
No, we're not shifting from staff to.
I'm sorry.
It sounds like the staff is not petitioning. So if an individual that lives inside of a community of 500 homes says, hey, we have issues with traffic, if they came to the town and said, hey, we'd like to have some traffic calming devices installed within our neighborhood, I would have to go out and get the community involved and then come to the town showing that I've done this, versus an HOA being able to say, hey, we have access to everybody's emails, and we can just blast out everything, and then the town can coordinate directly with an HOA instead of with one person who's done everything by themselves.
Yeah, and I've been working
I
on.
think it's just more of a. It sounds to me, and maybe I'm hearing this wrong, but it sounds to me that it's more of a administrative type thing. It's not a. It's who are we going to speak to?
Yeah, all it's doing, it's eliminating the need for a petition when you have an HOA. It's saying you no longer need a door-to-door petition. The HOA is the one that votes, but we need the confirmation that they provided that information to the residents. I mean, I've been running this program since 2005. So, when I started here, and the main thing we hear, the complaints we hear from the people that have gone through this program is they don't like the petition process. It drags out. We have people that go out and they go door to door, and they obviously have issues with getting the owners to sign in those cases. A lot of the stringent requirements revolving around a petition. If there's not an HOA, this UDO amendment does not change that process. You still need to get a door-to-door petition if there's not an HOA, but this makes it much easier on communities that have organized HOAs who are the representatives for the community.
Okay. Thank you for that additional explanation. To hear that this is the feedback you're getting is really helpful. Can I suggest an and/or? So for folks who have, just like there is, for folks who maybe choose to do the current process, and I understand that folks who do not have an HOA can make that choice, but then the current process still stands. But I just wonder if going outside the HOA is still, again, speaking, right, my own experience, working with my HOA, it's going to be a challenge because we just don't have one right now. We don't have a president right now. It would be much easier for me to go door to door. So that might be resolved before I have to put any traffic calming devices in. But again, just allotting for things to continue as status quo, if that is easier for the petitioner.
So, I mean, the petitioner will still be able to go out and do a petition. We're just saying that if you have an HOA, you don't have to go through a petition process.
So you could, as the petitioner, choose to maintain the current process or do HOA.
per our current process, you have to work with the HOA up front anyway, but there is a period of time where the HOA can decide to be the ones to circulate the petition and move forward, or they can delegate that to an individual outside of the HOA. So I mean, what you're asking, yes, it probably could be done. It just greatly complicates the UDO in terms of adding this separate process. And I fear that what it's communicating to people that if you don't like what your HOA is doing, you can go around your HOA rather than working with your HOA, which is a body that's supposed to represent the neighborhood.
I think I'm allotting for folks whose HOA may not. Some HOAs are incredibly organized in town. We've seen them show up, right? Some HOAs are likely not, and having that option I think might be important, unless we're soliciting, are all HOAs organized?
And on the side note, Tina, I hear you, but I think this is more administrative aspect, because behind the scene, each HOA is different, you know, and their governing documents are different too. So, and they don't need to know that,
right?
You know, but I think for HOA, the board should govern and should control all those locations and whatnot, and work with the planning department. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to, we're trying to take some of the town's control away from the process and give it back to the HOAs to allow them more flexibility and make this process easier. So the one thing I want to avoid is I don't want to put anything in that seems to say that we would promote an individual going around the HOA, because I don't know the inner workings of every individual HOA, and
so what's really interesting about that, and I'm even more convinced, but I'm gonna stop talking here in a minute, is that I'm actually concerned now about the inequities that can come about from either or. So then I'm like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do anything at all about this piece, because in that sense, again, going back to some HOAs are incredibly organized and have exactly what they need to implement this. I also fear that we are potentially implementing a system in which we are encouraging more HOAs to exist, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily what we want to do. They can, but if we're putting more systems in place where it's harder to make a choice of either yes or no, I fear that we are then promoting additional HOAs to be in existence, and I think that's potentially problematic. And I'm not in favor of folks going around the HOA as much as I'm concerned of, we don't know what HOAs look like. We don't know how organized they are, how not organized they are. And my concern is that we might be alienating or disenfranchising a neighbor, a petitioner who wants to come before the board or before the town and insist on a calming device. So I just want to allow for as many entrees as possible.
So I guess what you're asking is if there's a non-response from an HOA, like if there's an existing HOA and we don't get a response from the HOA within a certain time period, then that petitioner could follow that process.
That seems, yeah, that would be fair.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can review that and be prepared to discuss that at council.
Okay. Thank you. Additional conversation.
Our HOA is not organized.
I do have just a observational, or maybe it's an empirical question. How often do you guys get requests for speed attenuation?
We get requests like maybe right now, since I've been working here, about maybe 2-3 a month or something like that. And so we do the speed studies. I think in the summer we didn't really get that many, but when school starts, that's when we started getting them again. And so obviously every time we get one, we do the speed study. There are some requests where we know, like, based on the amount of traffic volume you have there, it is not going to qualify. So we let them know ahead of time, like, we cannot do a speed study here because it's not going to qualify because you don't have enough traffic volume. So, I mean, there are times that we have to, at the face, we have to say, no, if we can't do it here, but we still will look at other traffic solutions.
Additional questions or possible motion?
Am I understanding right? You're taking on the costs, so you're not requiring.
No more cost share.
That's the part where my HOA would have some trouble.
Right. If there are no more questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional discussion amongst the board or possible motion? Well, our quiet bunch. Entertaining motions for amendments to the UDO for traffic calming devices.
There's a lot of good in here. And I think if we can find alternative ways to slow people down, that's a good thing. So with that, I would make a motion to approve the amendments to the UDO for the traffic calming.
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously.
Steve.
Thank you. Les?
Steve.
All right, last item in before new business is Amanda on some additional UDO on signs and correction of a typo.
Yeah, we'll save the easiest for last.
Always.
Okay. So the First Amendment is primarily centered around the signs section, and planning staff regularly gets complaints about signs, temporary signs especially, and especially the issue of political signs comes up every election season, as we're all aware. But also, several years ago, the Supreme Court made some rulings about temporary signage and said all of this signage has to be regulated similarly. You can't regulate signage by having to read it and then make a standard, judge like what type of sign it is. So it has to be, content neutral. They had a further clarification ruling that we can distinguish, confirming we can distinguish between commercial and non-commercial speech. So there can be some distinctions between commercial and non-commercial speech. So these amendments are bringing our ordinance into compliance with that. We did meet with the Planning Committee of Town Council and ultimately held a work session with Town Council to get some direction on how to proceed with these amendments, primarily with the decision of whether or not to move forward with an amendment to completely eliminate temporary signs within the public right-of-way. And I'll get into some of those details as we walk through the amendments. But before we get into those, just for an effective date, given that we're already in early election political season, we are proposing an effective date of April 1st, no fooling. So that would give the time for the typical timeline after the early election is held for candidates to remove their signs, although we'll already be geared up for the regular election, right? So the First Amendment I've gone over this. All signage is related the same, and we can have standards regarding time, place, and manner, location, size, height of signs, but we just can't regulate content. I've talked about this. We are going to be clarifying that any sign permitted by these regulations can display a non-commercial message. So, for example, if Waffle House wanted to have a sign that said, "We love Apex," then they could do it. It's not related to their business at all. You can have any message on your sign, but we're just making that crystal clear. Currently, commercial signs are not allowed in state rights of way, so this is getting into what some of the changes. There is a provision in state law that for a while has allowed political signs within state rights of way for a certain time period, and it's regulated in height and area. They've recently, in this past year, amended that section to add signage related to bona fide farms, so farm agricultural signage, and enforcement of that would continue to be in compliance with state law. Currently, commercial signs are not allowed in town rights of way. There are some non-commercial signs, temporary signs that are allowed, and the proposal is just to eliminate all signage within town rights of way. with the exception of governmental signs, public notice signs as necessary, traffic control signs. And this map just shows that the blue roads, which are primarily residential streets, with the exception of the Peakway, are the town streets. But our main thoroughfares where we typically see a lot of temporary signs are state maintained rights of way.
So those signs would be allowed there
According to state statutes.
during that time period.
Yes, sir.
Well, and remind us that was political and agricultural signs are
Yes.
the ones that are allowed in DOT right away.
Correct.
Who enforces the sign ordinance?
That we enforce the sign ordinance within our jurisdiction.
Zoning compliance officers. Okay.
Sign police.
Do we have like, is Apex have like sign people for like?
We have 5 zoning compliance officers, including the supervisor. Typically, those are going to be on a complaint-driven basis, but occasionally we do sign sweeps. So we'll just go throughout the jurisdiction, and anything that doesn't meet our current UDO, they'll pull and remove those.
They heist them.
They actually are brought back. They actually are brought back here to town hall and put in the trash enclosure for several months so people can come pick up their signs if they want. But most people do not come pick up their signs.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through the rest of the amendments and summarize. There's a lot here. I understand that. So the first set of amendments is to add a purpose statement to the ordinance, and this helps defensibility of our sign regulations should they ever be challenged. And these are consistent with other jurisdictions in the area. Does anybody have any questions on the proposed purpose statement? I don't want to read everything word for word for you. Okay. So for the permanent sign types, there are a couple of amendments we are making to permanent sign types. The first is we're moving the home occupation standards here, since that aren't temporary in nature, and striking the sign type civic club nonprofit off premise, because it's an off premise sign which we don't allow. And so just marking that as a reserved sign type. And then our temporary sign types, most of them will be struck from the ordinance because they are very specific to and content related, and we're consolidating them into 7 different types. And that's on-premise, non-commercial, construction site signs. So that's going to be like while a site's under construction, that typically lists the contractor and other information that they're required to post while a site's under construction. Event commercial, event non-commercial, seasonal outdoor sales, window and sandwich board signs. Currently, sandwich board signs are only technically allowed in like our downtown area. And even though we know they're in other places like Beaver Creek and other shopping centers, so the proposal is to allow that throughout the town according to the standards that currently apply downtown. We're also indicating, and we'll see this again later, that the special standards, sign standards that exist for the Central Business District and the Historic District will also apply to our Downtown Festival District, because there are some areas of the Festival District that extend outside of the boundaries of those areas. So the home occupation sign type, pretty much the standard is just moving. We did modify a standard that referenced attached to a pole. We don't allow pole signs, so we're cleaned up the language a little bit with that. But for 99% is the same as exists, just in a different place in the ordinance. Striking the civic club sign as I referenced earlier. For all of the temporary sign types, we're setting the number that are allowed, the height and the area, and the time limit of how long the sign can be posted. And indicating that such sign shall be located on private property. For the construction site sign, we're consolidating that. Currently, there's a distinction between non-residential or mixed-use sites and residential sites, and so we're consolidating that so the standards are the same regardless of what type of construction site it is. And providing an indication of when that should be removed, which is prior to the approval of the CO for the final building for non-residential mixed use, or the lease or sale of the last lot in a residential development. Any questions there?
Sorry, can you say that again about the residential signage? It was
So it would be the construction site sign would have to be removed no later than when 100% of the properties have been sold or leased, initially leased. So just showing the strike through of the specific sign types that are content based that we're removing. Event commercial, so this would be limited to no more than 3 signs or other advertising, promotional, or other commercial events on site, and setting the sign area, whether they're freestanding or attached to the building, such as like a grand opening or going out of business sign, and setting the time limits, which are the same as what we have, well, a little bit longer than what we have now. Similarly, for non-commercial, setting the area time limit, and they're similar in size and duration. Sign ordinance gets a lot shorter. I did, okay, so for the seasonal outdoor sales signs, this is on a property that's not a bona fide farm, so it's like a Christmas tree, temporary sales lot, or pumpkins, or fireworks, or whatever, setting the standards for that. Window signs, the major change here is eliminating the interactive digital display sign. I cannot recall the year, but it's been at least 4 or 5 years ago. We had a request for, well, a business that bought an interactive digital display sign, and we narrowly tailored these standards so that the sign could remain conforming. And to our knowledge, no other business has utilized this technology. Staff believes that it's in the best interest to not have this type of signage. And so we're taking this chance to propose it be eliminated.
Well, that then, is that sign still up today?
It is not. Okay. The business no longer exists where it was when the sign went up.
I see.
It was the sign.
Sorry. Oh.
Bad joke. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so these are the sandwich board sign standards that exist, currently just moved to the temporary sign section. And then we're clearly specifying signage that is exempt from the standards of this, of the sign ordinance, which includes anything that's governmental speech, traffic control devices, public hearing signs, public event signs, seasonal agricultural signs that are located on a bona fide farm. Bona fide farms are exempt from zoning, so we can't regulate them even if we wanted to, and that's per state law. And then non-commercial signs on a residential property, so people can put whatever message they want out in their front yard, you know, graduating senior or anything they want to say.
Where do signs for like summer camps or like football, where do those
So would that be like a town camps? Those could be located anywhere because governmental events or notices are exempt. But if it's a private camp, then they would have to work out something with a private property owner to locate a sign on that property for the time limits that are listed in the ordinance. So we do typically see, you know, the fish fries, the fundraisers, the whatever, those are typically what we see, although along with that, we also see the, we buy your house for, you know, whatever, you know, all the things. And so since we can't look at a sign to regulate and keep one over the other, we have to treat them all the same and regulate them all the same. So
sign, what is it called? Wayfinding signage for like home communities was a big topic about 5 years ago, just right before COVID, where like you would have a new community opening up and they would say like along the DOT highway or even sometimes on town streets, they'd say this direction for that community. And I want to say that there was like, it could only be up during the weekends and then they had to be taken down.
that's not been, we don't have a standard that ever allowed them up in the weekends. I think they just put them up because our zoning enforcement officers weren't necessarily working on the weekends.
It was the weekends. It was an unwritten ordinance.
So there's that. Right. And we do know there are companies that will, you know, get every neighborhood that's under constructed to try to like work with towns to allow those, but we don't haven't and aren't proposing that. We do have a prohibited sign section, so we're just clarifying that commercial and non-commercial signs within the public right-of-way are prohibited with the exception of those that are allowed by state law. This phrase in yellow I accidentally struck in your version of the staff report, but I've fixed that for the town council version.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Going back about the different, those who can and cannot have those like temporary signs like the town can, could churches be allowed in that as well?
No.
Okay. So I know sometimes they put on the temporary, fish fry or something like that, but I think that would be good for them as a community. That why wouldn't we let them, allow that?
Right. So we have to narrowly tailor and that gets back to the purpose statement. We have to narrowly tailor the regulations, and so there is a governmental interest in that sign is information for the public by the government itself. To get that information out. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
I was just going to say, any nonprofit, any non-commercial speech, they can go and talk to property owners and say, hey, we're having a fish fry. Can we put this in your front yard? They just can't put it in the right of way.
Okay.
And they also can put it on their own property. So if it's a church, they can, they can go ahead and put it on their own property as well.
Right.
Like let's just say, like give an example, like the Methodist Church, because they're kind of off the beaten path of Salem Street, but if they wanted to get direct traffic to a potential fish fry, they couldn't put anything along unless they had consent from a private property owner along Salem Street.
On private property.
Okay.
So I'm thinking about pancake breakfast, which I always see and only know that it's happening because it is on the right. It's on the right of way. That would no longer be allowed.
That's correct.
Okay.
I saw Tina at the pancake breakfast.
I know it's coming. I just never know when it's exactly happening.
The original Supreme Court decision where this all came to a head was something that was specific for churches, and it was different than something that was allowed for a different type of speech, and we can't regulate that. So, okay. We're just proposing to change abandoned signs to obsolete signs and defining that in the definition section later. Clarifying that portable signs, which are already listed as prohibited, does not include sandwich board signs. And the rest of these changes are primarily, so the abandonment of signs, we're getting to that. Abandoned signs are already regulated in the prohibited sign section, so there's no need for it to be listed under sign maintenance. And then in the standards that are specific to the downtown broader area, we've moved sandwich board. And so in addition to those standards, and then they have their, they can be located on the brick utility strip in front of the business, like on Salem Street, which is so that's an exception there. For animated signs, adding feather signs, those are like the banner type, they kind of look like a bird feather. So making sure that that's prohibited under animated signs and providing a definition for those. Defining obsolete signs. So this really helps us to be able to enforce something. If something's been put out and it's way past the time where it was supposed to be put out, then this gives us the definition of how long that is, or if a business is closed. And so we can pull that sign. Adding a definition for permanent sign, which doesn't exist now. And then clarifying for temporary signage that for the purposes of this section, a sign which is intended for use of 1 year or less is deemed a temporary sign. And then there's other sections that are affected by changes to the sign ordinance, and that's what the remainder of these amendments reflect.
Do you have inflatable signs?
Those are prohibited. Yes. Those are under the animated.
Floppy wing guys, not good.
So yeah, the floppy guys.
How will we, other than obviously this is a public venue, is there going to be a specific outreach to organizations that typically put out signs to let them know? So I am thinking about the breakfast. I'm thinking about the fish fries, and the pig pickins, and anybody else who regularly puts out signs. Not that we buy houses, folks. Not that I'm sure they offer
right.
service, but I feel like signs have been a part of our existence, at least as long as I've lived here, that looking for those signs. I'm just wondering if there's going to be outreach.
Sure, I have, and we can continue to evaluate more ways to outreach, especially since we've proposed and extended, the effective date to be April 1st. But I've provided notice of the amendments to the Triangle Community Coalition. I will be meeting with the Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee on Wednesday and reviewing the highlights of these amendments with them. Again, they're posted on our website. We have the public hearings with council, but we can evaluate how we can spread the word in other measures too.
Yeah, we can talk to our communications team and see what ideas they have for social media.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Just hate for folks to, right, buy signs, purchase those signs,
Sure.
Peak Fest is coming up.
Yep.
So starting after April, the political signs that we see within town right away, that's no longer permitted?
That's correct.
But
They would have to be on private property.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the key. We're just wanting it moved off of the road and onto private property. And these standards are very consistent with a lot of our neighbors in the area. So there's always an enforcement issue with a sign ordinance, no matter where you are or what your ordinance says. But we're at least setting the standards that we think will address concerns we've heard from the community.
I think also notifying, I hear that we're going to be in contact with communications, but I really think notifying these folks, political signs, the political parties, and our nonprofit and church friends who do put out signs pretty regularly. I think it would be great if we could do specific outreach to them so that they're aware before folks start buying signs.
Just so you know, Tina, they do have to fill out a temporary sign permit.
Yeah.
And the rules are on that permit. They choose not to abide by them.
When is that, how far in advance do they have to fill out a temporary sign permit?
Well, the sooner the better.
I ask because, again, right, like, it's going into effect April. If folks are printing and buying stuff now, again, I'm thinking Peak Fest. If folks are buying stuff for Peak Fest, if Kiwanis is buying stuff for Peak Fest, I'd like them to know so that they don't buy the number of signs that they normally buy to put out.
Good news is she just let Peak Fest know.
I did, right? Like, but I named Peak Fest but in the sense of, right, that we want to let folks know before they order the signs.
So if it's related to a temporary use permit, they're supposed to, they don't have permission to do anything until their temporary use permit is approved.
They may order, but we've been doing this forever, and now there's a change. And so they may they may regularly order 250 signs. And if now their availability to put it out is now limited to 100, we don't want them wasting that money.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments on the signs amendment?
Do you foresee enforcement increasing because of these changes versus what we've done in the past?
These guys are
No.
extremely efficient.
No,
They are efficient. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, but the enforcement's not going to be. It's not going to be any different than what it's been. Honestly, we have limited amount of time to do this type of enforcement. So when we get complaints, or I would say it's every other month or quarterly, there's a sign sweep, but it's not going to be more. It's just the rules are more in line with the Supreme Court decisions. That's all.
Council might take issue with this.
Council's aware. We had a work session and in detail went over this.
This board doesn't have signs, the council does.
So
we had a work session and
we were very direct in the conversation and what we proposed and had the whole dialogue with them and they directed us to write it in this way.
I have one question about the customary holiday display. Are they saying no holiday displays? Certainly that's not what they meant by that, I don't believe.
What this is saying is that it says except for. So yeah, you can put lights all over your business, your house, your yard, whatever, in customary holiday displays. And we've moved it out of the sign section and only regulating it in the lighting ordinance. Since it was in both places, it didn't need to be in both places. And we've just struck the reference to holiday signs.
Thank you.
So, any other questions on signs?
No signs, that's what it is.
You could have them on private property. Okay, so the last amendment is really easy. It's simply to request to correct a typo in the section reference to additional regulations in the dimensional standards table. It's pretty straightforward, and staff is recommending approval of these changes. I can answer any questions if you have any more.
Thank you, Amanda. Any additional questions or points of discussion from the board? All right, possible motion to approve the UDO amendments as presented?
I'd like to make a motion to approve all the amendments, revisions as presented by Amanda.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
I didn't hear who that was.
Give it Steve.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You opposed? All right, one more motion.
I'd like to make another motion.
Yes, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, please.
Second, Tim.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, adjourned.
Heard it.